Hello and welcome to day 67 of the Not Alone Today Chronological Bible Reading Plan with Joseph and Anu. Today we'll be reading Joshua chapter 14 from verse 6 to 17 verse 18 using the God's Word translation.
Joshua chapter 14 beginning at verse 6. The people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal. Caleb, son of Jephunneh and grandson of Kenaz, said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me? I was 40 years old when the Lord's servant Moses sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. I reported to him exactly what I thought. But my companions discouraged the people. However, I was completely loyal to the Lord my God. On that day, Moses swore this oath: the land your feet walked on will be a permanent inheritance for you and your descendants, because you were completely loyal to the Lord my God."
So look at me. The Lord has kept me alive as He promised. It's been 45 years since Israel wandered in the desert when the Lord made His promise to Moses. So now, look at me today. I am 85 years old. I'm still as fit to go to war now as I was when Moses sent me out. Now give me this mountain region which the Lord spoke of that day. You heard that the people of Anak are still there and that they have large fortified cities. If the Lord is with me, I can force them out, as He promised.
So Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. Hebron is still the inheritance of Caleb, son of Jephunneh and grandson of Kenaz, because Caleb was completely loyal to the Lord God of Israel. In the past, Hebron was called Kiriath Arba. Arba was the greatest man among the people of Anak, so the land had peace.
Chapter 15. The lot was drawn for the families of the tribe of Judah. That territory extends as far south as the territory of Edom and the desert of Zin. The southern border starts from the south end of the Dead Sea and goes south of the Akrabim Pass. It then passes Zin and goes up south of Kadesh Barnea. From there it goes to Ezron, up to Adar, around Karka, and on to Asmon. It comes out at the river of Egypt so that the border ends at the Mediterranean Sea. This is the southern border.
The eastern border is the Dead Sea as far north as the mouth of the Jordan River.
The northern border starts from the north end of the Dead Sea at the mouth of the Jordan and goes up to Beth Hogla. It then passes north to Beth Araba and goes up to the rock of Bohan, son of Reuben. From the valley of Achor, the border goes up to Debir and turns north to the region that faces the Adumim Pass, south of the valley. Then the border passes the springs of En Shemesh and ends at En Rogel. It continues up the valley of Ben Hinnom to the south slope of the Jebusite city, Jerusalem. It then goes to the top of the mountain that overlooks the valley of Hinnom to the west at the north end of the valley of Raphaim. From the top of that mountain, the border goes around to the spring of Nephtoah. From there, it goes to the cities of Mount Ephron and around to Bala, now called Kiriath Jearim. From Bala, the border turns west to Mount Seir and over to the north slope of Mount Jearim, now called Shesalon. It then goes down to Beth Shemesh and on to Timnah. From there, the border goes to the north side of Ekron and turns to Shikeron, onto Mount Bala, and comes out at Jabneel. The border ends at the Mediterranean Sea.
The western border is the coastline of the Mediterranean Sea. These are the borders around Judah that belong to their families.
Joshua gave Caleb, son of Jephunneh, a share of land among the people of Judah, as the Lord had told them. It was Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron. Arba was the father of Anak. Caleb forced out Shishai, Ahiman, and Talmai, 3 descendants of Anak from Hebron. From there, he marched against the people living in Debir. In the past, Debir was called Kiriath Shipha.
Caleb said, "I will give my daughter Aksha as a wife to anyone who attacks Kiriath Shepher and captures it. Then Othniel, son of Caleb's brother Kenaz, captured it. So Caleb gave him his daughter Aksha as a wife. When she came to Othniel, she persuaded him to ask her father for a field. When she got down from her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What do you want?"
She answered, "Give me a blessing. Since you have given me some dry land, also give me some springs." So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs.
This is the land inherited by the families of the tribe of Judah.
On the farthest edge of the Negev, on the border of Edom, he gave the tribe of Judah 29 cities with their villages: Kabzeel, Eder, Jagur, Kinah, Dimonah, Adada, Kedesh, Azor, Ithnan, Ziph, Telem, Behaloth, Azohadata, Kirioth Ezron, now called Hazor, Amam, Shema, Molada, Azar, Gada, Heshmon, Bespelet, Hazashual, Beersheba, Biziothia, Bala, Lim, Ezem, Eltolad, Shelsil, Homan, Ziklag, Madmana, Sansana, Libaoth, Shilhim, Ain, and Rimmon.
In the foothills, they gave Judah 14 cities with their villages: Eshtaol, Zorah, Hashna, Zanoah, En-Ganim, Tapua, Enam, Jarmuth, Adullam, Sokor, Azekah, Sharaim, Adithaim, Gedera, and Gederothaim.
They also gave Judah 16 other cities with their villages: Zinan, Adashar, Migdalgal, Dilean, Mizpah, Joktheel, Lachish, Bozkath, Eglon, Kabon, Lamas, Shitlish, Gederoth, Beth-Dagon, Nama, and Makeda.
An additional 9 cities with their villages were given to Judah: Libnah, Ether, Ashan, Iphthah, Ashna, Nezib, Keilah, Achzib, and Maresa.
Judah also received Ekron with its cities and villages. This included all the cities with their villages between Ekron and the Mediterranean Sea and along Ashdod. Added to this were Ashdod and Gaza with their cities and villages as far as the river of Egypt and the coast of the Mediterranean Sea.
In the mountains, they gave Judah 11 cities with their villages: Shamir, Jatir, Sokor, Dana, Kiriath Sanah, now called Debir, Anab, Eshtemo, Anim, Goshen, Holon, and Gilo.
They also gave Judah 9 other cities with their villages: Arab, Duma, Ishan, Janim, Beth-Tapua, Aphikah, Homtar, Kiriath Abba, now called Hebron, and Zio.
They also received another 10 cities with their villages: Maon, Carmel, Ziph, Juttah, Jezreel, Jokdeam, Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah.
Halhol, Beth-Zor, Gedor, Marath, Bethanoth, and Eltikon were 6 other cities with their villages that were given to Judah.
The 2 cities of Kiriath Baal, now called Kiriath Jearim, and Rabbah with their villages were given to Judah.
In the desert, Judah was given 6 cities with their villages: Beth-Arabah, Medin, Sekaka, Nibshan, Amela, and En-Gedi.
However, Judah was not able to force out the people of Jebus who lived in Jerusalem, so they still live with Judah in Jerusalem today.
Chapter 16. The lot was drawn for Joseph. The border of Joseph's territory goes from the Jordan River at Jericho to the spring of Jericho on the east, through the desert that goes up from Jericho, and through the mountains to Bethel. From Bethel, the border goes to Luz, and over to Atharoth at the border of the Archites. Then it descends west to the border of Japhlet and lower Beth Horon onto Giza and ends at the Mediterranean Sea. So Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, received this land as their inheritance.
This is the territory for the families descended from Ephraim. The eastern border of the land they inherited is from Ataroth Adar to Upper Beth Oron. From there the border goes west, with Mikmethath on the north. The border then turns east to Tanath Shiloh and passes east to Janoah. From Janoah it descends to Ataroth and Naarah, touches Jericho, and ends at the Jordan River. At Tapua the border goes west along the Kana River and ends at the Mediterranean Sea. This is the land given as an inheritance to the families of the tribe of Ephraim, with all the cities and their villages selected from Ephraim in Manasseh's territory. However, they did not force out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer, so the Canaanites still live in Ephraim today, but they are required to do forced labor.
Chapter 17. The lot was drawn for the tribe of Manasseh, because Manasseh was Joseph's firstborn. Machir, Manasseh's firstborn, the ancestor of the people living in Gilead, had received Gilead and Bashan because he was a soldier. The land was given to the rest of the families descended from Manasseh, to the descendants of Abiezer, Helek, Asriel, Shechem, Hephah, and Shemida. These were the male descendants of Joseph's son Manasseh listed by their families.
Zelophehad, son of Ephar, grandson of Gilead, and great-grandson of Machir, whose father was Manasseh, had no sons, only daughters. Their names were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They came to the priest Eleazar, Joshua, son of Nun, and the leaders. They said, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us some land as an inheritance among our male relatives." So they gave them an inheritance among their father's relatives as the Lord had required. 10 portions of land went to Manasseh, besides the land of Gilead and Bashan, east of the Jordan River. These portions were distributed because Manasseh's daughters were given an inheritance along with his sons, while Gilead belonged to Manasseh's other descendants.
Manasseh's border extends from Asher to Mikmethath, which faces Shechem. Then the border goes south towards the people who live in Tapua. The land of Tapua belongs to Manasseh, but Tapua itself, on the border of Manasseh, belongs to Ephraim. The border then descends southward to Kana River. These cities belong to Ephraim. Although they are among Manasseh's cities, Manasseh's south border is the river, which ends at the Mediterranean Sea. What is south of the river belongs to Ephraim, and what is north of it belongs to Manasseh. So the Mediterranean Sea is its western border, Asher its northern border, and Issachar its eastern border. In Issachar and Asher, Manasseh possessed Beth Shean and Ibleam with their villages, and the people living in Dor, Endor, Tanakh, and Megiddo and their villages. The last 3 are on mountain ridges.
But Manasseh was not able to take possession of these cities, since the Canaanites were determined to stay in this land. When the Israelites became strong enough, they made the Canaanites do forced labor, since they didn't force all of them out.
Joseph's descendants asked Joshua, "Why did you give us only one region for an inheritance? We have a lot of people because the Lord has blessed us."
Joshua replied, "If there are so many of you, go into the forest. Clear ground for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephaim, if the mountains of Ephraim are too confining for you."
Joseph's descendants responded, "The mountains are not enough for us either. Besides, all the Canaanites living in the valley, in Beth-shean and its villages, and in the valley of Jezreel, have chariots made of iron."
Then Joshua said to the descendants of Joseph, the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, "You are an important and very powerful people. One region is really not enough for you. The mountain region will be yours as well. It is a forest, so you have to clear it. All of it will be yours, but you must force out the Canaanites, even though they are strong and have chariots made of iron." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
By way of quick recap, so today we read from Joshua 14, verse 6, all the way to the end of chapter 17. In the latter part of chapter 14 that we read, verses 6 to 15, we saw the story of when Caleb came to Joshua to claim a land that God had promised him, the part of the land that he spied out when himself and 11 other spies were sent out, and Moses spoke prophetically to say, the place that you have treaded upon with your feet will be a permanent inheritance for you. He kept that word, he came for it, and he went for it. Chapter 15 tells us Judah's land, which sounds like a very large expanse of land and many, many, many villages and cities that were given to the land of Judah. Chapter 16 was about the division of the land for Joseph's sons, specifically for Ephraim. And then in chapter 17, we saw the land that was given to Manasseh. And towards the end of the chapter, there was that story about the tribes, the descendants of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, that is, complaining that the portion that they have been given is too small. And Joshua would encourage them to go into the forest, clear it, add that to their land. And that's the summary or the recap for today's reading. So in chapter 14, verse 6 to 15, what stood out to you?
In the verses that we read in chapter 14, what stood out to me was how that Caleb held on to what Moses promised him in Deuteronomy 1:36, where he said, as for Caleb, I'll give him the land his feet are trodden. Although it wasn't mentioned exactly where the land is, but apparently Caleb knew enough to know where it was, held on to that promise for 40 years. And that is really admirable for me. Because at this time, him and Joshua, they're like aged comrades amidst this vital young men. But still, as Caleb continued in his wholehearted service to God, he did not forget what was promised to him. And he laid claim to it. And that stood out to me. And it just didn't lay claim to it. It laid claim to it in a vivid way, that if the Lord is with me, I can force them out as he promised. So it's not just going to force the Anakites out based on his own say-so. It's going there to force them out as God has promised him. And the promise was made to the whole Israel, but he individualized that promise. And it teaches me to lay hold of the promises that I read about in the Bible, or that God has said to me. Even if it's said collectively to a group of people, I can personalize it for myself and lay claim of it. What about you?
I mean, that's the same story, the same aspect of the story that stood out to me. The fact that he treasured God's promise in his heart for that long. But also, again, it reminds us of the template for really conquering these lands, which again is the template for victory, namely, if the Lord is with me. The difference is we are persuaded of that in itself as a promise and assurance from God repeatedly in the new covenant under which we are. It's not an if. The Lord is with us. He says to them after giving the Great Commission, Jesus speaking to his disciples, and lo, I am with you always, Matthew 28 verse 20. I am with you always to the very end of the age. And we can always be assured of that. The psalmist would describe him as an ever-present help in times of trouble. And so it's not a question of if the Lord is with us. It's because the Lord is with us, we can force them out as he promised. And that's striking to me because for the remaining chapters, the repeated emphasis that stood out to me then became the fact that when all of these many lands that was given to Judah was listed, the last verse of chapter 15 tells us, however, Judah was not able to force out the people of Jebus who lived in Jerusalem. So they still live with Judah in Jerusalem today. When we saw that of the descendants of Ephraim, verse 10 of chapter 16 tells us, however, they did not force out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. When we read of that of Manasseh's land, the same rhetoric was said in verse 13 of chapter 17. When the Israelites became strong enough, they made the Canaanites do forced labor, since they didn't force all of them out. All of these people that were not forced out, even though it looks like they still have some sort of control over them, of course we would know that this is the beginning of the cracks that will lead on to the cycle we'll begin to see in the book of Judges. because many of these people in these Canaanite nations and regions that were not forced out will end up becoming thorns in their flesh and would lead them in many cases to also forsake the God that has given them all of this land as a possession.
And also in 14, just wanted to say that if we note from all the land distribution that we read about from 15 downwards, they were given to tribes, but only Caleb got a portion for himself personally.
That's right.
Apart from what was given to his tribe, because he laid hold of the promise. It just keeps ringing in my head. Like one person carved out a niche for himself in the midst of thousands. And that is so amazing and so bold that makes him want to shout. Hallelujah.
Indeed. Chapter 15, anything stood out to you?
Yes, 15, verse 15 stood out to me on how that Caleb just didn't sit with Hebron. He also marched to Debir to conquer that land again. And this is a person that is 85 years old, dealing with people way younger than him. But the drive is still there, the marching out, the laying hold of things. Like his ownership of what belongs to him, what he feels is his inheritance. The way he went about it, it's quite instructive for me. What about you?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, the very last verse of that chapter, I found it just quickly raised the red flag in my mind as I read it. Like, Judah was not able to force out the people of Jebus, the Jebusites that is, who lived in Jerusalem. We know how significant Jerusalem will eventually become in their story, but it says here that they still live with Judah in Jerusalem today. So it's like saying the people that God had specifically instructed you to ensure you wipe them out, you did not do that. So as much as they got all of these cities and villages, and obviously Judah is arguably the largest tribe, and again they got so far the largest share of the land, but they did not drive out the people of Jebus. They did not force them out. And that leaves a big question mark on the story and on their portion in the promised land. Chapter 16, anything stood out to you?
Yes, I wondered as well why Ephraim did not force out the Canaanites. And it's as though they glossed that disobedience with, actually, we made them to do forced labor so they can still stay there. But we know from the instructions God gave Moses repeatedly that when they get there, they have to force all the people out. Otherwise, they would trick the Israelites, they will lure the Israelite with their religion, and God doesn't want that. And it was a repeated instruction all throughout. I don't know if it's Deuteronomy or Numbers. And God kept saying it, when you get to that land, do not mix with them, do not
intermarry with them.
Do not intermarry with them and things. But if they're not letting them stay and requiring them to do forced labor, I don't know.
This is the book that will lead us into the book of Judges. So we might as well begin to start making some of those connections now, because this is the very template upon which the servitude that they will... I mean, when we get to the book of Judges, you would wonder, were these not the same set of people that we've just been talking about as, being so mighty and accomplishing all these great feats, and Jordan was parting and drying up, and, Jericho was falling before their eyes? Yes, it's a new generation, but even amongst this generation, it's almost like the writer of the book of Joshua, which is arguably Joshua himself, has gone above and beyond in showing us that the things God did with the generation of Moses, the generation that came out of Egypt, God has repeated the same things in different ways to this younger generation. So for those ones, he parted the Red Sea. For these ones, he parted the Jordan. For those ones, he miraculously fed them, miraculously healed them when they were being beaten by snakes, just look to the pole and you'll be healed. All sorts of miraculous interventions. These ones we're beginning to see the same. And many of the things God did specifically through Moses. Remember Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush. Take off your sandals, you're on holy ground. Joshua too is encountering an angel of the Lord, a commander in the Lord's army, telling him, take off your sandals, you are on holy ground, and things like that. When Moses stretched forth his rod, Bible says, that was what began the parting of the Red Sea. When Joshua stretched forth his rod, in the case of the battle against Ai, we also remember what that signified and how that brought great victory. So there are so many glimpses here and there of, God saying to them, I'm with you as I was with your fathers. And specifically to Joshua, I'm with you as I was with Moses. And I'm doing with you the same things I'm doing with Moses. But to then see that they did not force out the people they were required to force out is the beginning of some of the cracks that would go on to play a huge part in their story. Chapter 17, any thoughts?
What stood out to me is verse 17 to 18.
Same, yeah.
Yes, where Joshua told them to force the Canaanites out and reminded them of their importance. But then I wonder, why do they need reminding? It reads as though it's obvious to Joseph's descendants that the region is for them, but they chose not to. It's as though they said, because the Canaanites are there, I can't even look at that side. So Joshua, give me something else. And I like how Joshua redirected them to the exact region that is fit for them, and how they are important enough and powerful enough to force the Canaanites out. And that reminder is quite good, because sometimes we're faced with issues that are beyond our control. Like, the issues are so powerful and so nerve-wracking that we think, hey, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And then we would want to turn away from the issue to go seek some other respite. Some people would turn to food. Some people would turn into work. They would dig themselves into work. Some people would just, go on social media. We all have coping mechanism. But the instruction in this chapter is that instead of turning to those transient respites, we need to turn back to face the issue and understand that we're important and powerful enough to force the issue out, to address the issue, to ask God for how best to attack or address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. It's those same couple of verses that I have highlighted as well. And you're right, they needed that reminder. Of course, we don't know whether eventually they would go on to do what the charge was given to them. But it's the same template really for us. It's a story of courage, or the lack thereof in this case, and to remind ourselves that courage is not like a feeling. It's a choice. It's a decision. It's something it's waiting for you on the other side of obedience, is how I've heard it described lately. When you take the first step in obedience, when you go and begin to clear out that forest, then you begin to see that actually the courage has always been there all along, waiting for you as you take your steps in fulfilling or aligning your steps with what God has planned out for you, with the will of God in that sense. So yeah, it's very, very instructive to us. Many of us will get to junctions where we feel like, I can't do this. No. I don't have what it takes to. I can't even begin to consider that. But if that's part of what He has ordained for you, then the courage is there to do it. And we have said it, that it's not an if the Lord is with you. He is with you, as a matter of fact, as a matter of truth. So go for it and do it. Albeit, against the breeze of the reluctances that you may feel on the inside. All right, thank you for joining us for day 67. We turn the page on day 68 and forge on in the story. But till then, just remember, you're not alone
Today, God bless you.
God bless you.